Hi and welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to look at the AWS Lambda service and how it can be used. So now the AWS Lambda service is a serverless compute option that's available from AWS. Currently the support languages are C#, Java, Go, Node.js and Python. The best thing about AWS Lambda is that you only get charged for the amount of time that your Lambda function runs. So since this is a serverless compute functionality that's available by AWS, the way it works is that when you upload a function first and then you run the function. Now after you run the function, a container is created for you behind the scenes and the code will run in that container. When your code has finished running, the container will be stopped. So that's how the AWS Lambda service works in the background. Now you can have different versions for your functions, and this is important. Now if you're having a service has a function, you can then use different versions of your services by having different versions of your functions. Each function can be treated as an independent unit. That's important. See, from the microservices pattern architecture, independent units for your different services, that's what's important. So for your application, let's say you defined your price and orders. So we've seen our price and order services. It could connect to MySQL databases. Now what you can do when you're actually working with AWS Lambda, you can define separate functions for price. So one function for price and one function for orders. And then when it comes to versioning in AWS Lambda, it just becomes so easy. You can create a new version of your price service and a new version of your order service, which connects to the same data store. And then you can actually replace these versions as part of your application. So now in our changes to our demo app, I'm going to make it again very simple. So we're going to have a simple Lambda function that returns order quantity values. Now remember that functions can be called from different programming languages. Now even though our main function is going to be in Node.js, we can actually call that Lambda function from our order page or from our individual service pages. And then our main demo app page will just not change because now it's getting information from our order page, and anyway our order page is getting information from our Lambda function. So now let's go on to the AWS console. I will just quickly show you the Lambda function. It's damn simple. And then I'll just show you the order.php page. So here we are in the AWS console. Now if you want to go on to AWS Lambda, you just go on to the compute section and click on Lambda. Now I've already gone ahead and created a function known as orders. Now this function is of the runtime Node.js. Now I have a very simple function. All I'm doing is just returning the quantity values. So these values will then be picked up from my orders.php page. So now if I look at my orders.php page, remember there is a lot under the scenes, but I'm not going to explain all of that because again the idea I want to show you is that we are not changing the demo app.php, we are changing the orders.php page. And over here, what I'm doing is that I am actually going on to Lambda. So I'm using the factory model, which is there for the Lambda client. And then I'm invoking my orders function. I'm getting the payload. And in the payload, I am actually splitting the values and then sending the values back to my demo app.php. So this is one way in which you could also design your services. So you could have your entire actually logic inside your function, and then you could just make this PHP page call that particular service, get all the information, and then relay it on to your presentation layer. That's the entire idea. When you refresh your demo app.php, you will get the same information. It's again not going to change. And the change which I made is in the underlying orders.php and not in the main page. This is actually what I want to show when it comes to designing your apps using a microservices architecture pattern. So you can design multiple AWS Lambda functions in Lambda. So you could have one separately for orders, you could have one separately for your pricing. So it all depends on what you want. And you can also add code for Lambda functions to connect to backend data stores. So you can connect to DynamoDB from AWS Lambda, and you can have an end-to-end service defined using Lambda and other AWS backend services. So now let's go on to our next video, which is using the AWS API Gateway.